Oh, he's had numerous number one hits with huge songs like She's Crazy for Leaving and Looks Could Kill, and one of my personal favorites, I Couldn't Leave You If I Tried. Country music legend Rodney Crowell joins us on the line this afternoon. Hey, Rodney, how are you?
I'm okay, thank you.
Your love of country music and how you first got into the biz. Of course, the great Jerry rediscovered you back in 1972. Take it from there.
Came to Nashville in the early 70s and fell in with some pretty high-caliber songwriters, mainly Guy Clark and Townes Van Zandt, Mickey Newberry, and David Only, a few other guys, and really got bit by the bug and basically studied, learned how to write songs, learned the craft of songwriting, and I've just followed the songs ever since. That's the most simplistic story that I can give is that I'm a songwriter and probably naturally born, but I learned from being around some really great songwriters, and I've had a pretty good career since.
And that's what a lot of people don't know about you, is that you are a huge songwriter. I mean, you've wrote some pretty big songs for Tim McGraw, Keith Urban, and I mean, the list goes on, right?
Yeah. Well, the thing that's going around now is that I've had songs in the top 10 in every decade since the 1970s. So I guess there's some kind of gravity to that, that sets me apart in some ways. But then again, to get focused on such things it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to write any more songs. So I really try to keep the carrot out there in front of me.
Back in 77, Roddy, there was a group called the Cherry Bombs. Yourself, Vince Gill, tell us about that group.
The thing about that band, Vince Gill, everybody knows what Vince went on to do. Tony Brown was a piano player in that band, and he went on to produce everybody's records for the longest time. Emery Gordy as well, producing. He was a bass player in that band. He produced Patti Loveless. And Hank DeVito, he played with the Everly Brothers a good long while. And then there was the great Larry London, who passed away too early, sadly, who played on so many different records. It was a really high-caliber, excellent band, and sadly, and not enough people got to hear that band play because it was an extremely creative group of people.
Rodney, who were some of your musical influences back in the day?
Hank Williams, Sr., Bob Dylan, Ray Charles, for sure, Howling Wolf, Merle Haggard, George Jones, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, and Bob Dylan, if I haven't already mentioned. Certainly Townes Van Zandt and Guy Clark and Mickey Newberry, and Waylon Jennings and Willie Nelson and Johnny Cash, and I could Chris Christopherson, I would Elvis Costello. I mean, I just keep going. Leonard Cohen, my favorite.
Your songs have been recorded by a vast array of artists. Are there any particular covers that you love?
A lot of them that I love, and some of them I don't particularly like. But I sing the praises of those I love to those who did it if I get a chance to say. And if I don't like what somebody did with my song, I graciously thank them for even thinking of recording one of my songs. And if there's a version of it I want to hear that nobody's done, then I could do it myself.
You and the great Emmylou Harris released an album this year called Old Yellow Moon. I absolutely love the musical chemistry between you and Emmylou. Your thoughts on the new album?
We won a Grammy for it for best. We got a lot of accolades for that record, but I think even more fulfilling to me is we did a year-long tour. We did over 100 performances together, and they just got better and better and better as we went along. And it was, I think we really found or rediscovered a chemistry that we had back when we first met in the 70s, and we were both in our 20s, and the whole, the highway was out in front of us.
One of my favorite songs of yours was, of course, Walk the Line Revisited, a Johnny Cash song. What did Johnny think of when you recorded that song?
Oh, well, when I brought him to the studio to sing his words to a new melody that I had constructed around the story of the first time I heard him heard I Walk the Line on the radio. He was taken aback, and his eyes got kind of squinty. He looked at me. He said, "Son, you have a lot of nerve changing my melody." So the gauntlet was there, and so I kind of brashly quipped, "Yeah, well, you're the man to do it. Get out there and let's see if you can." So he goes out there and, knocks it out in 2 takes and looks at me and says, "Will that do for you?" I said, "Yeah, it'll do really fine." So it was a little standoff there, but all in good spirit. He was doing it humorously.
For those that did not know Mr. Cash, what was the man like?
Oh, man, how would you describe Johnny Cash? Publicly larger than life. It belongs on Mount Rushmore, the musical Mount Rushmore. Privately, he was for your audience that doesn't know, he was my father-in-law for 13 years.
Sure.
and my friend until he passed away. Privately, he's just a kid, he's a big boy, a joker. He liked to play practical jokes. He liked to laugh. He was funny, really funny, and just a big kid, just a big galoot of a kid. There's part of him that never grew up, and I really enjoyed that part of him.
Rodney, who is one artist you would love to work with?
Leonard Cohen, but I doubt that's ever going to happen. He's so self-contained. He's your homeboy, Leonard. He's one of the greats of all time, I think.
What is one song of yours in your career that you are most proud of?
Impossible to say, because I could say right now and it would change. 2 days from now you could ask me the same question and I'd have a different answer. Perhaps right now, a song that I wrote with Mary Carr called "Anything But Tame." Really lesser known song, but I come at songwriting from the craft and the inspirational side of it, and there's just not a word out of place in that song.
So, Rodney, what's next for you? You have a brand new album out called Tar Paper Sky. Absolutely love it. How did the idea for this album come about?
Well, the idea came about over a period of time. It's not like I sat down and said, well, I'm going to make Tar Paper Sky now. It doesn't work that way. A lot of conversation, a lot of hours writing songs and sifting through the ones that I think are worthy of recording and throwing out the ones that really aren't, and then discussing with some of my musical collaborators a new way to record and see if we can find a way to get music on tape in a way that we hadn't done before. Mostly through conversations, believe it or not.
Your memoir, Chanaberry Sidewalks, was a big seller back in 2011. What were some of the topics you wrote about in your book?
Oh, mainly about my parents. That's the reason I wrote the book, because I wanted to tell the story of my mother and father's highly improbable and ultimately successful marriage. The possibility, if you'd have met those two when they were 19 years old and 18 years old when they got married and followed them for a little while, you'd have said, these two will never make it. And yet they did. And that, to me, that was the arc of the story and the reason I wanted to write the book in the first place. I had no interest in writing a book about the career that I've had, like a love story to myself, to my fans. That just seems self-serving. But to write about my parents, which led me to also write about the neighborhood where I grew up in East Houston and about some of the really colorful characters that were around back in the day when I was growing up. As a friend of mine said, he said to me, man, if I had parents as colorful as yours, I'd write a book too. So, that's really the gist of the book.
Country music legend Rodney Crowell, I appreciate your time today, and it was an absolute pleasure speaking with you, and please keep the hits coming.
Okay. I'll try. I'll do my best.
All right. Thanks, Rodney. Take care, eh?
All right. Hey.